How many of you say, "You kids are driving me crazy. You make me so mad I could scream"? You hear the neighbors yelling that? I can't ask my kids to earn their own money. I can't send Timmy to bed without supper. That's all lies. Claim your own power. Sometimes people say, "You kids are driving me crazy. You are making me mad." Do you know that's voluntary? When you want to be mad, you're mad. And you don't get mad if you don't want to be. Are you telling me that somebody else makes you mad? No, you make yourself mad. You allow yourself to be mad. And don't say, "You kids are driving me crazy," because they believe it when they're little. They believe it. They think magically. They still believe in Santa Claus before they're 8 years old. They can't figure that out yet, 6 years old. And they believe you. But own your own power. I don't want to ask my kids to earn their own money. I don't want to send Timmy to bed without supper. Own your power. But don't tell me I can't, because that's a lie. Is that true? In therapy, we deal with people all the time. One of the first things we got to do is help them own their power. "Well, I can't do this. I can't." Yes, you can. You can decide to do it. And you can do it. Own your power. Own it. Tell me I don't think it's right to send my kid upstairs without dinner. Tell me I'm too chicken, I'm too wimpy, I'm too much of a twit. I understand that. Tell me I don't believe it. I understand that. Tell me I think it's wrong. I understand that. But don't tell me you can't. And so we got to lay that groundwork before we get into this next step, okay? This is a trap. All right, because you can do it. Own your power. You can do it. In some homes, children fight and quarrel. So why do children hit? Why do they fight and quarrel? Why do they whine and beg? Why do they throw tantrums? Why do they ditch chores and disobey? Why are they lazy, unappreciative, disrespectful, forgetful, and argumentative? Why are they? Because that kind of behavior pays off in that home. And that kind of behavior is getting them what they want. Now, are they miserable? Yes, they're miserable. But that kind of behavior is paying off. And if your kids are doing it, it's because that's paying off in your environment. Other children down the street, or your children, are hardworking. Weigh this out. Are your children hardworking, pleasant, cooperative, respectful, appreciative? Do they obey? Do they listen to you? Do they take responsibility? Do they earn and save their money? Do they control their temper tantrums? And if they do, it's because that kind of behavior pays off. Do you know we can take one set of kids where this is happening and another set of kids where that's happening, and we can switch kids and put them in the other home, and guess what will happen pretty soon? The kids will adapt to whatever's rewarding in that particular environment. See, we've created our own hell or our own heaven. By understanding correct principles, we create a heaven. By not understanding and exercising Lucifer's program, we create a hell on earth. And that's what we're talking about. Now, this isn't to make everybody feel terrible. "Oh, I'm doing it all wrong. I'm all beat up here. Go home feeling bad." That's not what this is about. This is not to make people feel guilty. This is to give us power. This is to understand where that power comes from. This isn't to beat up people and say, "Oh, you're so wicked, you're so stupid." Because I'm the world's worst example. And so I continually say that, and people are starting to believe me now. And that I am a bad example. I was a bad example, and I'm trying to change. The fact of the matter is that these kids obey or disobey because it pays off. Remember this. Children are smart. Children do what works for them. They give up behavior that does not work. What pays off for them in your home. That's what they'll do. If you want to change your children's behaviors, don't start beating them up. Change the rewarding and the punishing schedule in your home, and they will adapt to the new environment. Somebody asked me, how soon can we start to do this behavioral modification that you're talking about? Can you do it with a 3-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 40-year-old? Does it work? How soon can we start implementing your program? I said, ma'am, they do this with rats. Okay? 4-legged rats. And some 2-legged rats. They do it with rats. Even a rat knows every time he goes over here he gets shocked. He quits. And my daughter will stand there and reason with this 3-year-old that's having a tantrum. Sweetheart, you're making too much noise. You're driving me crazy. You give me a migraine. And I don't like that. Does that kid care? They're egocentric. They don't care. He can't imagine what mother's head feels like. He wants another donut. Give me a donut. He doesn't care. Absolutely no comprehension. All right. Whatever pays off, that kid does. We don't work on the kid, we work on the environment. Now, there's several important principles. I'll just go over very quick. I'll just mention them. These are some of the principles that you need to learn. In modifying a child's behavior, you need to understand this principle. It's the pleasure-pain principle, commonly referred to as the hedonistic principle. And that is that living organisms prefer pleasure over pain. Isn't that brilliant? But we don't use that. In other words, we move away from pain and we move towards pleasure. Boy, that's a key right there. All behavior has a payoff. See number 3 there? Number 2, behavior. To define behavior, behavior is anything that we do. It's anything that's done. Anything you can see or measure. Behavior. Blinking is a behavior. Crying is a behavior. Behavior is anything that you count, measure, or you can see. And we never do anything without a purpose. All behavior has a payoff. All behavior has a goal. Behavior that doesn't pay off, that doesn't get you anything, is given up as useless, wasteful behavior. So in the economy of effort, we give up that which does not reward us. We pursue those things that are rewarding to us. If I put a nickel in the machine and it pays off, I keep putting a nickel in the machine. If I put a nickel in the machine and it doesn't pay off, I might put one more nickel, but if it doesn't pay off again, I won't put it in. And I'm not talking about Las Vegas, I'm talking about a telephone booth. And there's a difference. All right, behavior always has a payoff. Rewards are anything that reinforces the behavior and enhances the probability that the behavior will be repeated or increased. So a reward makes the behavior stronger. A punishment is anything that begins to extinguish or eliminate the behavior. All right? These are just very, very simple issues. Now you can spend a whole semester in school talking about these. So punishment decreases behavior, extinguishes the behavior. And then we can also shape behavior. And this is what we do all the time. The little boy comes to mother, the little cookie beggar comes to mother and says, "Mommy, I want a cookie." And she says, "No, Herkimer, you can't have a cookie." "Why not?" "Because I gave you a cookie yesterday and you didn't eat your dinner. So you're not going to have a cookie today." "Please, Mama, I want a cookie. Please." "All right, you promised to eat your dinner tonight?" "Okay, I do." "Okay, you can have a cookie. Remember your promise." Okay, he doesn't eat his dinner. The next day, mother is in the kitchen. He says, "Mommy, I want a cookie." And she says, "No, sirree. 2 nights in a row you didn't eat your dinner when I gave you a cookie." "No way, Jose." And then, so he begs some more. So mother is beginning to shape a behavior. Do you understand? First he just had to ask and he got one. Then he had to kind of ask and promise to get one. Now he has to ask and say his tummy hurts and he's really hungry. Now she gives him one. And every day he comes back for another cookie. Mother is more set, stronger in saying no. And that means that every day he has to overcome a greater objection. Does that make sense? And so he gets stronger. And pretty soon he cries and falls on the floor and she says, "Okay, I'd like to have a cookie." And pretty soon he holds his breath, screams, hollers, makes life hell for mother in order to get that cookie. And then she finally gives him a cookie. She has shaped this child. Tantrums are shaped. They're the results of shaping behavior. Tantrums have to be ignored. But they've always got a payoff, haven't they? If mom is there to finally pick them up and pay attention. All right. So shaping behavior is the process of reinforcing behaviors till they get worse and worse and worse. That's the easiest way to say it. All right? At this point, that's what we're talking about. All right, now consequences. Let's look at consequences. There needs to be rewards, there needs to be punishments. Rewards, punishments, natural consequences. A natural consequence is something that occurs without parental intervention. The kid forgets to take his lunch to school, so rescuing mothers, what do? They run the lunch to school. And so he realizes that he can leave his lunch at home and mother will bring it. Is that true? What is mother training the child to do? To be what? Irresponsible. Now, so mother decides not to go take the lunch anymore. And so the school teacher feels bad. These blue school teachers, they're all into rescuing, right? So they say, "Well, Herkimer forgot his lunch. Poor thing. He's sitting there and his tummy hurts. Oh, here's $1.50. Go buy a school lunch." So he goes and buys a school lunch. And then she calls you. And she says, "Herkimer forgot his lunch the other day." And Mama, you say, "Yes, I know." And she says, "Well, he didn't have any lunch, so I lent him $1.50 to get lunch." And you say, "Well, that was nice." She's waiting for you to say, "Oh, I'll send the $1.50 with him tomorrow." And the silence is astounding. and you don't say anything. You lent him $1.50, you get it back from him. Oh. Okay. So he's going to have to pay the $1.50. And he forgets the lunch again because somebody rescued him before. Did he learn anything? He didn't learn anything. So he does it again. If she's dumb enough to lend him $1.50, that's okay. The point I'm saying is that natural consequences occur without any parental intervention. Sometimes you have to have logical consequences. You have to make a consequence. You punish a child for running out in the street because if they get run over by a truck, that's a little final, and you figure that they don't need that much of a lesson. So you tell them it's wrong to be out there, and so you're going to keep them in the backyard. Sorry, I can't let you out in the front anymore because you play in the street. I can't trust you. You're in the back from now on until you're 35. All right. Logical consequences. No TV. There's got to be consequences. This lady told me, she said, I can't understand it. I do consequences. I come to your class, I do consequences, and they don't work. I says, what are you talking about? They always work. If there's tough enough consequences, they work. Nobody's going to pay $100,000 for a hamburger. They work. Consequences work. You get big enough consequences. I said, tell me what's happening, she told the group. She says, what we do is we have this rule in our home anymore but about TV in the morning. Because the kids start watching TV and they don't get ready and everybody's late and everybody's screaming all over it by the time we go to school. So I made a rule, no more TV in the morning. And there's punishment. I said, okay, why isn't it working? She says, well, every time it's on, I go over and turn it off. And then I walk around for a little bit, and then pretty soon somebody turns it back on again. And it's just really frustrating. I punish them and I turn it off. I said, that's not a consequence. That's not a consequence at all. That's like catching somebody robbing a bank and you say, you can't do that. Stop it. Don't do it anymore. He says, okay, and he leaves. So don't do that. That doesn't mean anything. She says, well, what kind of consequences are you talking about? I says, I'll tell you what. I'm talking about this kind of consequences. Don't say a word. And tomorrow I will guarantee you, the way things have gone, the TV will be on in the morning. She says, I know. I say, don't say a thing. Don't say a word. Just ignore it. Well, that's not what you taught us to do. Just ignore it. And then when they come home, the TV is gone. Why get upset? The TV is gone. And she gets this evil grin. Is that what you're talking about? I said, that's what I'm talking about. You got to touch their hearts. Reach out and touch someone. And then after a week, say, you all notice the TV's gone. You know, they'll come in, they'll say, where's the TV? And you just say, well, I took it out. Well, why did you take it out? Because we have a rule that there is no TV in the morning because we all get so late and upset with each other. So the rule is no TV. Oh, and that's why you took it out because it was on this morning? Oh, you're bright little children. Yeah, that's why. And next time it'll be 30 days. It won't be 1 week. Do you think they had another problem with the TV on in the morning? But I tell you, mother begged and begged for weeks to get that TV off in the morning. Remember the cancer of the lips story? Lips falling on the ground, twittering. Please talk about the TV. They don't care. And they would drive her crazy. Action is king. Consequence is king. All right? That's what you do. All right, so you got to do these things. Don't constantly warn. Only action works. Be like Heavenly Father. Be consistent with these consequences. Tell them what the task is. Tell them what the consequences are. Is this right out of the temple? Right out of the scriptures? Tell them it's your choice. Observe their choice. Apply the consequences. And then when they're screaming, when they're screaming around, then you say something like this. Well, I have to respect your decision not to use the car for 30 days. I didn't decide not to use the car for 30 days. Are you crazy? I didn't do that. Say, yeah, that's the consequences for bringing the car home 2 hours late. And so that's just what happens when you do that. Because I have to stay up, and so I don't like that. So you bring the car in late, and you don't have it for a long time. Comment? Oh, I love this. Okay. The question is it your responsibility to tell them first? I'd say no. Like you said, they say, well, you didn't say. You didn't tell me. And your answer is, you didn't ask. This is called problem ownership, see? Now, studies show, and I mentioned this, that if you describe to them what's going to happen before, and you've already started to establish you don't lie, it goes a long ways. And you tell them what's going to happen before, the learning curve, is sharper. In other words, they learn quicker if they got some idea. But they will learn if you never say a word. I mean, you cannot communicate to a little child. Like my daughter was telling the kid, do this, do that. He doesn't care. But every time he starts to whine, immediately she just picks him up and takes him in time out. Shuts the door And he comes out, so she gets a bathroom lock on the door, puts the lock on the hall side, locks it. Say, now you can stay in here by yourself with the door open, or Mommy will close it. Which would you like? I don't want either one. Well, you're going to have to pick one, so there you go, click. And you come out of there, it's double time out again, and he's back in there. Now, even a rat that you cannot talk to will understand if you keep doing it. He comes up to the door and gets shocked. He comes up to the door, he gets shocked. He comes up to the door, gets shocked. Once or twice, he knows. That's it. You didn't even explain it. He doesn't even speak English, this rat. Okay? And these kids are infinitely smarter than a rat. So stop talking. You just confuse them, especially when you're lying. Don't talk. Say, watch. Watch what happens around here. From now on, watch. Put some tape over your mouth. Don't talk. Stop talking. You get cancer of the ears, okay? They will. People, I am serious about this. I am serious, dead serious. Okay. Does this make sense? Did you get this down? That's the Garden of Eden model. Do you follow it? Isn't that the garden model? And that's what you do. Do it then. Okay. Inconsistency, what does it do? Inconsistency is lying. Sometimes you punish and sometimes you don't for the same offense. You've got to be consistent. If you let the kid get away with it once and punish twice and get away with it once, these kids go for the odds. That's a pretty good deal. I get caught. Once this lady caught her little boy. She says, I caught him? Yeah. The little boy stole $1 out of his mother's purse every morning regularly. On the 30th day, she caught him and gave him a scolding and took the $1 back, and he promised never to do it again, and that was the end. That kid made $29 that month. And he walked off thinking, crime doesn't pay? Boy, that's not true doctrine. Crime pays real good. So she says, well, what should you have done? Well, what I would have done, I'd have taken his bike and sold it for $100 and kept it. And the kids say, you can't do that. What do you mean? It's done. Now the next time, it's your Nintendo, or it's your bed, or whatever else. We don't do this stuff with little thieves. Remind me to talk to you about thieving and lying. Talking doesn't work. I mean, you steal something from your mom, and he comes home and his bike is gone to recover the losses. Mother says, if she comes back, she says, I assume that you get away with it most of the time, so I guess you've been doing it for a long time, so it's about $100 worth. Overkill. This is called overcorrection. And so the kids said, it's not worth it around here to steal stuff. It's just not worth it. It doesn't pay off at all. I don't know what that crazy woman's going to do. I got to stay home and guard my stuff. People, parenting is fun. All right? Some of you really do have some wicked looks. Let me go home, okay? We'll fix these guys. Can you see how our whole mentality needs to shift to give them the problem? It's their life. It's their stuff. And we reward and we punish according to what they do. And it's so important that children realize early that their decisions determine if they're happy or in pain. It's very, very important. It's our duty to make sure that those things go through so we don't give them a distorted view of the world. Inconsistency causes insecurity. There's families where they've studied that are strict. There's families they've studied that are lenient and permissive. And those kids are pretty good because the kids adjust to that reality. What is so traumatizing to children is when parents vacillate from strictness to laxity. And they go back and forth. It's the inconsistency that traumatizes children. Inconsistency is crazy making. Sometimes they laugh at me for this, and sometimes they hit me in the head for this. And reinforces disobedience. Every time you allow that kid to do something and he gets away with it, you're reinforcing his disobedience or his irresponsibility. It destroys your credibility and it causes parent deafness. When there's anger and you're fighting over these things and the consequence, the kid comes home and it's like an hour late. He knows what the curfew is. But see, these kids in their minds, they've got this written in their brain. They come programmed like this. It's called test the system. Test the system. Don't believe those old people. Test the system. They said they're going to have new rules. Just hang in there for a while. They'll change the rules. They'll go back to the old way. So test the system. So this kid brings the car home an hour late. And the rule is you have the car home by 10 o'clock on weeknights and you can stay out till 1 o'clock on weekends one night. And he brings it home like 2:30 some night. Dad's up there. Dad's waiting. And the kid knows Dad's waiting. And so he comes and he's got this story made, and the first thing he's going to do is tell about the old lady he helped on the highway, right? Or whatever it was. And Dad says, that's okay, son. Don't want to hear it. The kid wants to justify. Dad, I had a good reason for getting all the guys. You want me to have some old lady out on the road. Dad says, hey, that's okay. I understand. But Dad, I want to know, what's happened here? Am I going to be quarantined, or what's going to happen with this thing? Am I going to, we'll discuss it in the morning. So, Dad, I got to know. Son, right now I'm a little irritated. Don't push me on this. I want to know, if I'm going to lose the car. And Dad says, well, yeah. And right now, son, I'm thinking in terms of years. So we better let me cool down a little bit. I'll discuss this in the morning. Because at night, what's going to happen? Are you going to get anything done at night there? No. So then you decide a little later after you've calmed down and got a little rest. So diffuse those situations and be consistent. Be consistent. We had this group, and this lady was in here, and the group was getting after her. You got to be consistent. You tell them this, you got to do it. And you got to do it every time. And she was having problems. And she says, I am consistent. I am consistent. Most of the time, I'm consistent. That won't work. You got to be consistent all the time. Now, these fallacies about punishment we'll look at really quickly. Some people say that the more punishment you give, the better. That's not true. The more you use, the less effective it is. Some say that punishment is unnatural and ineffective. That's a lie. Punishment is natural and it's very effective. Some studies show that punishment, the reason I'm covering this is because in most of the manuals that you read today, they'll say that you should not have punishment. And so I automatically discount that as garbage. Why? Is Heavenly Father into punishment? Are there punishments? Yes, then it's a correct principle, isn't it? Now we have to learn how to use it. And we follow His example on how to use it. So I just discount all those psychologists and all those books and tons of them. Most of them say by punishing, Freud himself said that punishment causes neurotic anxiety in children. Now that is not true. And yet you'll find it in most parenting books that you should not punish. Now, punishing, there's over 500 studies of guys working on their doctorate degrees and stuff that show that punishment is very, very effective when properly used. In fact, punishment is the only thing that works in some cases with some kids. Would you believe that? And that the learning curve is faster with punishment. Would you believe that? Yeah, sometimes. But it has to be properly used. Now, the more you use it, the less it is. Some people say it causes trauma. And that's not true at all. We all burn our hands on the stove, right? Is that true? We all have pain in life. Pain is a natural part of life. Pain is necessary in life. Without pain, we don't progress very good. So we know that pain is good. We learn from pain. So if we burn our hand, we all get traumatized. Baloney. These are theories of men that are against punishment, that want us to not understand punishment, be confused around it, so we do not punish. Punishment is to be administered in love, and it's to be administered gently, but firmly and completely. And punishment should be greater, I think, than the crime. And we'll talk about doing good punishment in a minute. All right? And there's other reasons that kids hate the parents, that it causes aggression. The only one of these that has any truth at all is that it causes aggression, and that's under certain cases. If I start to spank a little boy and he hauls off and swings at me and I quit, I can reinforce that behavior. Do you understand? And then I start to spank again, he's going to hit me again, then I stop. So that can cause aggression. My mother told me, if you run from me when I spank you, or you swing at me if I'm going to spank you, you get it twice as hard. And I believed her. So I never ran away. I always took it. Now I'd run like heck. But that was back then. Okay. All right. And the kids that hate the parents, that's not true. Studies show years later, when they interview people, that they appreciate the parents that loved them enough, that cared enough about them to see that they were punished when they had it coming. And they realized that those parents cared enough. They had enough courage to do those things. Effective punishment, what do? Punishment, to be effective, you're going to have to do it. And to be effective, it has to be relative. That doesn't mean it has to be a relative that gives it to them. It means that if it's more relative, then it means more. In other words, if you bring the car in late, then they lose the car. Does that make sense? If they're not doing the dishes, then they lose dinner. Or if they're not doing the lawn, or they can't play with the dog. Something where it's related to that particular activity or non-activity. So it has to do with that. For instance, I would say, son, you got to feed your dog. If you don't feed your dog, we're going to get rid of it. Not that I'm going to spank you. He won't believe it. So you got to get rid of the first couple pets, right? So what happens? The kid doesn't feed the dog, so he comes home and the dog is gone. And he feels real bad about that. I said, well, you got to be responsible. The dog went hungry for 2 days. And so I fed it and got rid of it. And when the time comes that you want to buy another dog and you take care of it and you feed it, Fine. And when you're mature enough to take care of the animal and not make it suffer, then you can have one. Otherwise, I'm going to get rid of it. In a few months, you save enough money for another dog, and you go down and buy one. And you say, are you going to feed this one? He says, I sure am. And if he doesn't feed it, I'm not talking about one error. I'm talking about negligence. And then it's gone again. This is how it's supposed to work. Okay, and punishment should be intense. It shouldn't be turning the TV off when they turn the TV on. It should be getting rid of the TV. In other words, it should be a lot worse than what just wasn't worth it. Like that little boy that I told you, he was been stealing out of his mother's purse. She took his bike that he had bought with his own money, sold it, and kept the $100. Was crime worth it? It didn't pay at all, did it? But the way she punished, scolding him and telling him he can't go out and play with his buddies for a week or whatever it was nothing. The punishment should more than fit the crime. Now, I'll pay $20,000 for a $20,000 car because it's worth it, huh? Sometimes people will buy into the punishment because it's worth it. Okay? They figure it's worth it. I'll go out to the party and I'll get grounded this weekend. I'll go to the drunken party and Susie, Loosey-Goosey Susie is there and we'll have fun and make out and I haven't got nothing to do with the weekend anyway. I'll get grounded over the weekend. Who cares? So they buy into the punishment. So the punishment needs to be sufficiently severe, intense. This is speaking strictly behaviorally. The more intense the punishment is, the less likely that behavior will occur. And don't try to be just. Try to modify the behavior. And it needs to be very intense. Doesn't mean it needs to be cruel. It means that it just got to be intense. Does that make sense? Do you see it? Don't try to be gentle. Well, this is your first offense, so we'll do this. We've actually had parents that condition their kids to where they can't punish them. You can gradually condition your children by gradually increasing the punishments in such small increments that they actually get used to the punishment till punishment won't work anymore. Do you believe that? And they'll go right ahead with their stuff. So when the very beginning starts, you make a very severe punishment that will not be tolerated. Boom, and that's a big punishment. And don't just start doing itsy-bitsy punishments. The quicker the punishment is administered, the better. There should be no escape from the punishment. Never, never, never negotiate the punishment. Once it's set up, it's coming. It's inevitable. They cannot escape it. And then make other options. If a kid is stealing so he has money for lunch, get him a job. Make other options so he doesn't have to steal or he doesn't have to lie. Now, this is good time stuff, people. All right? So take notes if you want. What is the secret in getting obedience? What is the secret in getting compliance? What's the secret in getting cooperation from your family? How are you going to get these kids to want to work? How do you want to get your kids to do their rooms? How many of your kids love to do their rooms? You don't even have to ask them to do their rooms. They love to help with the dishes. They come in and ask to help with the dishes, sure. How do you get your children interested? Get your children to work, to study. What is the secret in motivating a person to action? It is so very, 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 very simple. Motivation is driven by what? What drives all motivation? Reward. In what sense? I can give you a hamburger and you just ate 500 hamburgers and you're not going to do anything for that other hamburger, are you?
Desire.
Desire. Put it in one more word. I want you. It's a 4-letter word, starts with an N and has 2 E's in it.
Need.
Brilliant. Need. Right. And Joseph Smith taught this. He said that all action, both in heaven and in earth, is driven by faith, with the anticipation of some consequence for that action. That's Joseph Smith in Lectures on Faith. So all of our needs, perceived, real or unreal, need motivates all action. The kid needs to be accepted. They join a peer group. They're hungry, they eat. They're cold, they put on clothes. Some need motivates all action and non-action. Avoidance action. Pain, they need to get away from the pain. They want to stop suffering. They have a need. They want to get away. They want money. Everything is perceived as a need. Need. So kids need to need. And if you don't have your kids in need, you're not going to motivate them. You're not going to motivate them at all. And that means if you've given them everything, and there's 400,000 games in the closet, and 10 pairs of shoes, and every time they want something, you provide it, that means you're a dead duck. Because they've got everything in the world. There's no reason for them to mow the lawn or to work or to do anything else. And you have started to introduce an ingredient into your program that's against the gospel. Because when Adam was driven out of the Garden of Eden, what was he told? I will curse the ground for thy sake. And from now on, instead of producing flowers and vegetables and fruits spontaneously, it'll bring forth briars and noxious weeds and thorns to afflict and torment man. And you will go out and you'll sweat and you'll plow the ground and you'll work by the sweat of your brow. And you're to keep the Sabbath day holy. On the seventh day, you're not to work at all. But on 6 days, my wife corrected me. 6 days. She says, one more. Okay. In 6 days, you're to work. You're to work all 6 days. And you're to do all your labor in those 6 days, and you're to sweat. Because Heavenly Father knows that it's through sweat and struggle and saving and work that character develops.
This concludes the program on this side of the cassette. To continue the program, please turn the cassette over.
And if we have created an environment in our home where our kids are not participating in the Lord's program of work, what program are we following? So it's need. And Maslow was really inspired when he pointed out the needs that we have. This is Maslow's triangle of needs. These first needs, first we have physical needs, then security needs, and social needs, and achievement needs. And last, on the top here, we have self-fulfillment needs. But before we get into this self-fulfillment and doing good to others and being nice and servicing, we've got these physical needs down here. And these kids can provide a lot of these physical needs. And they're major needs. And they have to be satisfied. And the needs at level 1 have got to be satisfied before they're interested in level 2. And the level 1 and 2 have to be satisfied before they're interested in level 3. So the very first and primary thing is food, shelter, clothing, and some of this stuff. All right? Look at the social needs up here. Acceptance, belonging, intimacy, bonding, etc. So we can really create a lot of energy and movement and behavior by beginning to restrict some of these things that they've got. Now what are we saying here? We introduce what we call the token economy. The token economy is based upon 2 principles. What is the first one? Need. If the kids aren't in need, you're dead. They've got to be a need. And if grandma gives the kids $100 a month for spending money, shoot grandma. You're going to begin to have a very hungry bunch of kids. Hungry for things, hungry for all kinds of privileges, and we're not going to have any what we call non-contingent reinforcement. In other words, you get everything you want for free. The 2 principles that underlie success in your home that are going to get your kids to come and ask for more work are these 2 principles of the token economy, need and the satisfier. In other words, we have a need. This kid is so hungry, they've been out in the desert for 2 weeks, and they've been eating grubs and locusts, and they come in and they're thirsty and hungry, and you say, I'd be happy to give you this great big delicious malt and this great big 4-pound hamburger, and you can smell it. Here, come over here and smell this. And but before you do it, you need to wash these dishes. Just these 100 dishes over here. And do you think you're going to get a lot of lip? You're going to get a lot of... Me, I'm not into dishes. I don't do dishes. I got to do my homework. Is that what you're going to hear? They'll say, let me at those dishes. And as soon as the dishes are done, you may eat the hamburger. Here it is. Will they do it? But what if they've already eaten 4 hamburgers and 2 pizzas, and you offer them a hamburger and say, would you please do the dishes? They're not going to do it. So this illustrates the principle of need and the satisfier. Now, if they have a great need and you don't have a good satisfier, what if they're really, really, really hungry and they're starving and you offer them the Bible to read? Is it going to do them much good? And you start talking about, you should be into service and loving fellow men and living wonderful life here. They're not interested. What are they interested in? Something to eat. And so if you have a need and you don't have a satisfier, it's not going to motivate them. So you've got to have a very powerful need and a very desirable satisfier, and then you have a winning combination, and you've got to create that in your home. That's the basis. Okay, youth today loves luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority, no respect for older people, and talk nonsense when they should work. Young people do not stand up any longer when adults enter the room. They contradict their parents, talk too much in company, guzzle their food, put their feet on the table, and tyrannize their elders. This was written by Socrates. 500 BC. Have we made a lot of progress? Now I've got to talk to you about teenage retirement. Teenage retirement is a condition that you create in your home when you provide your kids all their food, all their clothing, all the toothpaste, all the hairpins, all the Band-Aids, all the toys, all the showers, all the soap, carpets, drapes, running water, icebox full of food, TV, trash compactor, everything. Teenage retirement. This is a term that includes all children of any age. It is a disease that afflicts children who are given everything, who are not required to earn what they get, or who have most of their needs met automatically, regardless of their behavior or efforts. And this is called what? Non-contingent reinforcement. They got bicycles, stereos, breakfast, dinner, lunch, clothes, privileges, TV, recreation, McDonald's, everything in the world, regardless of how they behave. We have developed in our children a sense of entitlement. My son was 16. He opens up a card on his birthday, goes like this and shakes it. Shakes the card. I said, what are you doing? Where's the keys? Where's the keys? I'm 16. I have a right to drive. I says, la-di-da. Okay. What did you have in mind to drive? So teenage retirement is the curse of our children. Again, I've got to get this across. Non-contingent reinforcement is no punishing. It's consequences for inappropriate behavior while providing everything without condition of earning. They don't have to do anything and are rewarded for it. Does that sound like the gospel? I have one other one I'd like you to read to see how it sounds. There is a law irrevocably decreed in heaven before the foundations of this world, upon which all blessings are predicated. And when we obtain any blessing from God, it is by obedience to that law upon which it is predicated. Does this give us a guide? Sweeties, you're going to earn your privileges of playing with your friends, having your friends over. You're going to earn your privileges to use your skateboard and your bike, and all the stuff you've taken for granted will now be conditional based upon your performance. And we're going to withhold privileges. You earn privileges. They're not just given to you. Now, it's hard for them to grasp what this means until they don't have anything. Let's look at what this means. Is this doctrine? Should we earn what we get? If we've been giving everything to our children without having them earn it, are we on the right track? They should earn. And when they earn, they develop character and self-respect and not a sense of inferiority. I've got a whole list of stuff that I won't go into now. You can go on for days listing stuff that we provide for these kids, and they don't pay for anything. They expect it all. They go to the icebox, they expect it to be full of goodies. They eat the dessert, you got more dessert. They expect you to chauffeur them around. They expect you to have all of this stuff. This one girl said, Daddy took her to the store and she was buying clothes and he was paying for them, which is a mistake. This was a teenage girl. And she was looking at one pile of clothes with the brand name is about 3 times more what these others were, a pair of jeans. And he looked at these brand names, one they're like $60 or $75 or something, these others like 20 or something. And she said, oh, Daddy, I would die if I have to wear these to school. And Dad's counting the stitches, exactly the same counting the stitches. These obviously came off the same machine. And this one's got the brand name. They were paying for the brand name here. Well, how about this one? She says, Daddy, I would die. I would die. Don't send me to school with those. We got to have this one. This is what everybody's wearing. Daddy, it's your responsibility to clothe me. And Daddy's ready. He's been going to the classes. And Daddy says, sweetheart, my responsibility is to cover your rear end, not decorate it. And so he paid some and she paid some. Later on, when this girl starts to really earn her money, these kids were into all these fancy stuff and they'd spend money to have anything. They start earning money, and guess what happened? Oh, they're down to the thrift shop and they come home and I got 3 blouses on sale. Mom, they're just like new. Nobody will ever know it's a second. It's got 3 sleeves, but nobody's going to know it is. And we got this. And these kids totally do a turnabout. They start to act like their mothers that have been doing this for years. Okay. Is Heavenly Father into contracts? Is He into contracts? First of all, a parent's responsibility is not to create an environment of affluence. That doesn't make you a good parent, to provide a million things for your kids and fill their closets with clothes and games and every opportunity in the world. That's not what a responsible parent does. A parent's responsibility is to create an environment that is full of developmental opportunity and challenges for children, not an environment of affluence. What kind of an environment has Heavenly Father created for us? An environment where we work and we struggle and we grow. And it is hard. But we develop stick-to-itiveness. We develop character. We develop integrity. We gain the abilities to save and to defer gratification, which our kids can't do because we give them everything. And now if we turn around and begin to give our kids everything, guess what happens? Remember in the Scriptures the model that we have time after time after time. The people are humble and they're in the depths of humility and they turn to the Lord for help. And they spiritually approach the Lord, and He blesses them and protects them. And because of the blessings and their goodness, they begin to prosper in the land. And they become wealthy. And when they become wealthy, they begin to set their hearts upon the things of the world. And their children grow up expecting everything with their eyes full of greed. And then they forget the Lord because they have everything and they're not humble. And then they fall into transgression and the Lord punishes them. And they're brought down again into the depths of humility. And then the cycle goes over and over. And you can repeat that cycle over and over and over in the Scriptures. It goes on and on. Affluence is not generally conducive to spirituality, is it? And so giving a kid everything does not develop character. And they don't feel good about themselves. And another thing I want to say about this. When I tell my son, and I give him everything, there's an underlying message there. And it's this. You're obviously such a twit and so incapable that I, the superior being, am going to have to supply you with your life's necessities. You're such a ding-dong that you can't go get a job and earn any part of your living. You obviously have no moral character, that you'll take a handout from anybody and you expect to be kept. So I will continue to give you everything in life because you're such a dummy. And the kid doesn't have any confidence and he acts like a dummy. And I say, how can you act like that? I've given you everything. And then we say to our kids, why do our kids act like this? We've given them everything in the world. They don't appreciate what we've given them. They're ungrateful, etc., etc., etc. And we've raised them exactly that way. We've created those monsters by not being able to require them to work and to be responsible. Now the Lord wants us to be loving parents that do wisely for our children that which will cause them to grow and develop. And it may be that the best thing in the world could be that our son missed the prom because he hasn't saved his money to pay for it. He misses it. And we're not going to step in there at the last minute because it would be such a wonderful experience for him and bail that turkey out. And we loan him the money or do whatever we're doing. Do you think allowances are good? It's the welfare program. It's welfare. It's the dole. Here, you're such a dummy. I'll give you some money because you can't earn anything. I've heard psychologists stand up and say, kids need money, so give it to them. Why? So they learn how to manage it. What? You let my kid go out and work 10 hours out in the backyard pulling weeds and cleaning that place and getting it all done. You give him $20. I'll bet you he learns to manage that money a lot better than the $20 the neighbor gives his kid. Do you want to bet that? I'll put my kid up to your kid any day. If he goes out there and earns that $20, he's not going to go out and lend it to a friend or blow it on video games. Not my money. My mother taught me this when I was about 5 years old. Here comes the ding-ding, you know, this Disneyland thing or something. Guys that go around in these trucks that sell ice cream during the summer, they play little jingle bells or something. I don't know what they play in the summer. Not jingle bells. They play something, and they play some little kid song, and we know what that song is. That's the Ice Cream Man. And we immediately, that pushes the begging button. And we run into Mother and beg, 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 beg. Oh, Mommy, we want some ice cream. We want some ice cream. Give us some ice cream. And she gets tired of that. Every day that guy comes by, sometimes twice a day through our neighborhood. There's such big beggars. All right. So she says, you sweethearts, do you want ice cream? Oh, yes, we want ice cream. We love ice cream. Yay, yay, yay for ice cream. She says, okay. And she gave us chores to do. And we could earn money. And I went out backyard and I planted a garden. I did all kinds of stuff. I had a little can of a little bottle with a hole in the top and put in pennies and nickels. And I remember one time I had $3.10. That was a lot of money. So she says, from now on, you know, you can buy anything you want. Just your money. You can do what you want with it. Wow, that's good. Then the ice cream guy comes by. Ding, 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 ding. And she says, who wants ice cream? And I jumped. I says, I do. I want ice cream. And I come running. She says, bring your money. I'm not going to spend my money on something stupid. You eat that ice cream and that nickel's gone. That's when a melt nickel was a nickel. Now it's $1 or something, you know. I wasn't going to waste my money on something that was gone in a moment. I'll spend her money. Do you get the picture? Now, some kids you have will blow every nickel they got. They can't save a dime. And others of them won't spend a penny. They could be starving to death. And they won't spend a penny. They save it all. Now, there's got to be a balance, so you've got to teach them. So they need practice in saving and banking and earning their own money. All right, so you create an environment of opportunity. Okay, the token economy is you earn what you get. I guess you kind of got the idea. I really don't think a lot of allowances, because allowances are saying, I'm going to give you something without earning it, and that's against that section of the Doctrine and Covenants, isn't it? That you're to earn what you get. You're to earn it. Because taking what you have not earned is stealing. Taking what you have not earned is not right. And we want to establish honor in our children and not get them in the habit of taking what they have not earned or being a dole or being dependent. We want them to feel that they have power. We'll talk about child development a little later. Now, how many of you have used chore charts in the past? Raise your hands. They don't work very good, do they? We're going to reframe that. Kids hate chore charts. This is your duty. You live here. You better help, too. Quit being so selfish. You better help. Now go do this and go do that. Chore charts. Kids hate chores. Kids hate chores, but they love earning contracts. They love to be paid. Some people say, why should I pay my kid for making his bed? Because you want the bed made. All right? Cost to the parents. You mean to tell me I'm going to pay my kid for making his bed? Yeah. The behavior that you ignore and do not reward extinguishes. We have a tendency to ignore the good behavior. If a kid's making his bed, etc., we don't reward that. And that tends to extinguish that. Kids that were doing the dishes and used to love to do the dishes when they were little don't want to do them now because it's not rewarding. It was fun then, and that was the reward. And after it's not fun, they won't do them anymore. Would you go to work? You expect your kids to work on a principle that you won't. If they told you at work, we really appreciate what you're doing. We think you're a wonderful person. We want you to continue to come. We can't afford to pay you anymore, but we want you to come. And aren't you loyal to this? You know, don't you want to work? Doesn't it feel good to work? You say, no, I'm going to go someplace where they will pay me. We will do those things that are rewarding and not do those things that are not rewarding. I don't care. Mother's nagging notwithstanding. Kids are not into that. We develop skills through worse. Now, I got to cover this cost to parents. It doesn't cost you anything to do this, because if a kid is earning money and he's got $50 in the bank because you've been paying him for feeding the dog and taking out the trash, when you go shopping and he goes down to the store to buy a pair of tennis shoes, guess whose $50 he's going to use? He's going to pull his $50 out of the bank. In other words, instead of going down and giving the people at the mall $100 for this kid's clothes for school, and you pull it out of your pocket and you give it to the guys for $100 worth, you funnel that same $100 through the kid and his bank account, and he carries the money down there, and he pays them out of his money. And he's earned it. It hasn't cost you a penny. In fact, the token economy is always set up so the kids never earn quite enough at home. So they have to go out and start doing lawns, cooking bread, going shopping for old people, babysitting. My daughter had 24 piano students. They start doing this themselves, and they become industrious. And they start to save, and they start to manage their own time and their own resources. And you don't get that lazy bum out of bed in the morning. Okay, they develop great skills and character through this. Parents who rescue destroy their children. I know it's hard. I'm not talking about the kid in the street. I'm talking about he's not doing his studies, and so you rush around and take him to the library. He doesn't manage his time, he doesn't manage his money, so he can't afford this or is not doing that. When we step in and we start rescuing people for their irresponsibility, we're reinforcing irresponsible behavior. Does that make sense? Think about it. My children won't save their money. Now she wants to go do something, and she says, Daddy, lend me $20 and I'll pay you back. I say, I got to deal with the bank, honey. She says, what's that? They don't raise my kids, and I don't lend you money. I don't lend money. Because then I become the collector. If I lend that child money, unless it's an emergency situation, do you understand? If I lend that child money, I am reinforcing her. I am rewarding her for not budgeting and saving. Does that make sense? And I'm teaching her it's okay not to budget, it's okay not to save. Is this Heavenly Father's program? Does He lend money? He doesn't. You earn it. And this is it. And that's the only way He can teach us. If He was to reinforce bad behavior, we'd get worse and worse, wouldn't we? So that's the way it works. All right, a chicken, if you break the shell early, what's going to happen to the chicken? If you break the shell of a chicken before he pecks his own way out, what's going to happen probably? He's going to die because the muscles and the heart and the lungs and all that develops through the pecking out of that shell develops that chicken to such a degree that it's strong enough to endure the environment here. And he's developed now. It took that much. And he was protected until he got out. So it's a great thing. Now, if you start rescuing your children by saving them from their irresponsible behavior regarding homework or church or friends or their duties around the house, then what you're doing is you are reinforcing irresponsibility. You're teaching them to be irresponsible. You're rewarding them for being irresponsible. And then you get upset about it and you scold them and nag them. But they don't pay attention to what you say. They pay attention to what you do. Now, problem ownership is shifting the burden and responsibility and the consequences for irresponsibility from your pain to the child's pain. In other words, who has got the problem if the bedroom's not made? If the bed's not made in the bedroom's not picked up. Who's got the problem? Mom does. Does the kid worry? How many of you have had a child come home and say, I've had a headache all day, Mom. I forgot to make my bed this morning, and it's bothered me all day. Do they say that? No, they don't. So what they do say is, however, who cares? So we have this meeting, this great meeting, and we say, who wants a clean house? I want a clean house. Everybody going to cooperate? Raise your hand. We all going to cooperate. We're all going to raise our hand. Okay, we're going to pick up after ourselves. We're all going to pick up after ourselves. That's right. And you're going to do this, you're going to do that, we're going to do everything. That's right. 2 days later, the program kicks in. Test the system. Don't believe those people. Test the system. And so they start testing the system. Now, you've been nagging old Herkimer to make his bed. And he's made it actually 2 days in a row, and you feel real good. But now he jumps up late, he's late, and he jumps up and he looks at the bed. What does he think as he leaves the room and sees that bed is unmade? Something triggers, the bed's unmade, Mom wants it made. What does he think? I'm out of here. Mom can scream and holler, it's not going to hurt me. Then he comes home. Now this is called problem ownership. Mom's been the one that's worried about the bedroom, right? He hasn't had a care in the world. Now he comes back, and as he walks by the bedroom, he looks in the bedroom. In fact, it looks pretty big in there. In fact, my bed is gone. Mother, we've been robbed. Hey, the bed's gone. And she says, well, we've been going to this parenting class. And the guy said the most important thing are relationships. And if there's tension, then get rid of whatever's causing the relationship problem. So I got rid of it. You got rid of my bed? Yep, I got rid of it. It's gone. And the people I gave it to promised that they would make it every day. Mom, you gave away my bed. Yes, I did, sweetheart. Because I don't want to argue about it anymore. Remember I told you there would be no more nagging? Yeah, but I didn't know you'd get rid of my bed. Well, I don't need your stinking bed. I got a sleeping bag. And I'll just use my sleeping bag. I don't need any bed. Who needs a bed? That's stupid to have a bed. And so what does Mama say? That's fine, sweetheart. Make sure that you pick it up and put it away. By the way, feed your dog. Now, what is going on? What's going on? This is when it actually says you can go in the other room and say, hey, kitty, stop. And they say, what did Mother say? We got to be careful of her. She has gotten very dangerous. And Mother just kind of goes around with a knowing grin, looking at stuff. Does this make sense? This problem ownership shifts the problem.
So do you give the bed back?
They can earn the bed back, maybe if you didn't really get rid of it. If you really got sore, they can go buy their own bed. It costs $100 or something. Go down to DI and get another bed. But usually it's in the garage, and they can get it back in the bedroom after they earn it back. It might cost $5 or $10. Okay? But that's the deal. And you have that set up in the home so that there's going to be consequences. So we're going to have this, and you don't have to have the bed. I know I did that with my son. He didn't keep his room up, and I just said, if you don't keep your room up, you'll lose the bed. He was the oldest son, and the oldest son got a bedroom by himself. And as he left on a mission, then the next one comes along, and he would not keep his room clean. I says, well, then we'll give it to your brother. He'll appreciate it. So I warned him, and then he come back, and his brother's stuff was moved in, and his stuff was moved out. He felt really bad about that. How can you do that? I said, this is not your birthright. This is not your inheritance. I told you to keep your room clean. Keep it. Now you can be back there with your messy little brother. And you guys can get along, and you just love the mess. You can live in each other's filth, and that's okay. And he didn't get it back. He never would straighten up his little power issue. So if you don't want it, and the other brother kept it clean, and he kept it. So that was what happened there. Does that make sense, people? How do you like that consequence thing? They're fighting over the TV is gone. They won't feed the dog. They won't take care of the dog. They won't pick up the dog pies in the backyard. Guess what you do? This one lady said, "You mean get rid of the dog?" I said, "Of course." She says, "I love the dog." I says, "Get rid of the kid." She says, "That's a thought." That's a thought. That makes sense. The idea is that if we can reframe this whole thing, that we see differently, that we try to look at Heavenly Father's principles and put them in play, we're going to see things totally differently. Comment here.
When you have that token economy and you pay them for certain behaviors, you want the bed made, you want the dishes done. If they don't do it, one consequence is they don't get paid. Do we want an additional consequence, though, immediately, like you're talking about for the bed?
Okay, the question is, if they don't do their bed, they don't get the points, and they don't get paid, so should there be some other consequences too? And the answer is yes, and that's covered really good tomorrow when we do the multiple behavior contract. Yes? What kind of consequences? For what? Laying stuff around? I will tell you a true story. That little boy that we've got, this little kid, he's a brainy little kid, really smart. My grandson, of course. My daughter could not control him. He was running the house. And she could not control him. I would say she did not. And I told her, why don't you use some of the stuff you know? He's not responding to this being nice. You reason with him, and you've got this unrealistic expectation, sweetheart, that he's going to appreciate what you do for him. This guy's a little rat. You remember what you did in school? You've got to train the rat. Well, I learned some of the most important things I learned about behavior, learning how to train a dog. Do you understand? There was a whole film on how to train a dog, some of the best stuff I ever had. And this guy will learn. And so he comes in, "Mommy, I want some candy." And she'd always give him whatever he wants. Non-contingent reinforcement. Whatever you want to play, here's your toys, here's this. Now he earns his toys. Now he earns the right to come out in the front room. And now he earns the right to have a candy. Now he earns this. Yeah. I said, next time he wants a candy or a cookie or something, tell him to pick up his toys. And he comes running in, not very long right after, and I was there. I want a cookie. And she says, "Pick up your toys, sweetheart, and I'll give you a cookie." He says, "No." And he ran off. This happened 3 or 4 times. And finally, he says, "Okay." And he picked up his toys, and she gave him, I think it was a candy. And now it's to the point where she sets the timer. And he comes in just like this. This is called shaping. He comes in, and he says, "Mommy, I want a cookie. I want a cookie. Set the timer." This is a 3-year-old. He just turned 3. Set the timer. Set the timer. And she's like, this is okay. Let's see. All the toys picked up? No. Oh, they're all picked up. Okay. Let's go in your little brother's room and pick up all his toys. Okay. All right. And she'll go, "Go!" And that little turkey takes off down the hall. And he comes back. And you can hear that thing ticking. And he comes screeching back. And she gives him a quick, "Boy, you sure are fast." You can train a rat like this. And you don't have to explain it either. If every time he starts to whine with no comment at all, you just pick him up gently with love and you put him in the other room. And he comes out and then you say, "Well, if you come out of the room, I'll lock the door. Would you prefer the door open or shut?" And they'll learn this in time. And you take him back and you set the timer. And you say, when the ringer goes off, you may come out. If you call, I'll reset it. If you cry, it won't count. That's bad time. Only good time counts. And so she sets it and tick, 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 tick. And then he comes out. He knows. And then he comes and reports. And whatever the problem was, okay, now I'll pick up my toys. Because he went in for not picking up his toys, see. Now, will you pick up your toys? Okay. And if he says no, then it's back in timeout. But the point is that he learns. And without talking, because you can't reason with this kid. The Lord says in one scripture to train up a child. Not to reason, but to train. And so you can train. And there's a difference between train and reasoning and education. Do you see the difference? For me, there's a difference. You train them. Just think of that little guy as a 2-legged rat. Okay? And every time you reinforce that bad behavior, you're going to pay for it. And every time you reward him for doing what's right, you reinforce that good behavior. So you reward kids for making their bed and telling the truth and getting along.